On a crisp autumn morning, Buckingham Palace looked like a picture from a postcard. Bright skies, golden leaves, and the faint hum of royal routine echoing through its endless halls. But inside those polished walls, history was being rewritten, not with trumpets or pageantry, but with panic. Prince William, the heir to the throne, was about to be thrust into power. Not years from now, not at the death of a monarch, but today. And the strangest part, the cameras were already rolling. No one outside the palace knew it yet, but the monarchy was hanging by a thread. King Charles sat behind his desk, papers scattered, hands clasped, staring into space. Across from him, a small group of men and women, his closest advisors, senior lawmakers, top security officials, stood in silence. They had just laid out a nightmare scenario. Secret dealings, leaks to foreign intelligence, whispers of betrayal inside the palace, the kind of mess that doesn't just embarrass a king, it dismantles a monarchy. The solution was wild, desperate even. Step aside, let William take the throne immediately, spin it as progress, sell it to the public as modernization. Charles said nothing, but everyone in the room knew the truth. It was this or see the monarchy spiral into a scandal it might never recover from. Down the hall, Queen Consort Camilla was prepping for a charity luncheon, totally unaware of the storm gathering just a few rooms away. Dressed in lilac silk, adjusting her pearls, checking her reflection, it was supposed to be just another day. Until it wasn't. Charles finally stood up, his back stiff, his heart heavier than it had ever been. There were no speeches, no long deliberations, just a quiet nod. The machinery of the monarchy shifted into motion, fast and silent like a military operation. But before any official word went out, Charles had one impossible task left: telling Camilla. When he entered the room, she smiled, a warm, soft, routine smile, the kind you give your partner after years of navigating public scrutiny together. And then his words shattered it. "They want me to step down." Camilla froze. You could actually see it in her body. Her hands trembled, her mouth opened, then shut. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't even about Charles. It was about her. After everything, Diana's ghost, the headlines, the public hatred, the years spent clawing her way into acceptance, she was finally queen. And now, gone. Just like that. Her voice broke as she asked, "After all we've endured, this is how it ends?" There was no answer that would make sense. The monarchy doesn't wait for healing. It doesn't care about personal legacy, it just moves forward. While Camilla fought to hold herself together, far from the palace, William was deep into a climate change conference, talking rising temperatures and global emissions. Then, without warning, his aide leaned in and whispered two words that no royal wants to hear: constitutional emergency. His blood ran cold. He didn't even ask questions, just stood up, nodded to the panel, and walked out. In the car, his mind went haywire. Was his father okay? Had something happened to Kate or the kids? The 20-minute drive to Buckingham felt like hours, and when he finally arrived, he walked into a palace that felt more like a ticking time bomb. Kate was already there. They didn't even speak, just grabbed each other's hands and walked into the king's study together. What they saw inside would change everything. Charles, hollow-eyed and quiet, papers in front of him. The room so still it was like time had stopped. He looked at William, and in a voice that barely held together said, "You have to be king. Today." William didn't speak. He couldn't. The air in the room felt thick, almost impossible to breathe. He looked at his father, not as a king, but as a man stripped of his crown by circumstance. Charles had waited his entire life for this role, and now he was being asked to surrender it like it was borrowed. And standing behind him, silent but visibly shaken, was Camilla. Her face was pale, her body rigid, and her eyes locked, not on William, but somewhere far away, like she was staring into a nightmare. Charles motioned for everyone to leave. Only family remained: William, Kate, Camilla. No advisors, no aides, no palace whispers, just raw, unresolved emotion. "I never thought it would be like this," Charles said quietly. "Not with secrets, not with pressure, and certainly not with my own wife watching our future vanish." William was still trying to catch up. Abdication wasn't just some ceremonial choice. It was a tectonic shift. He had trained for this role in theory, but years from now, not today, not with Kate thrown into it overnight, not with his children unaware that their bedtime stories would now be read by a king. He glanced at Kate. Her face was calm, but he knew that look. It was the same expression she wore when shielding the kids from news cameras. The calm before the storm kind of strength. She gave a slight nod, letting him know she was with him, ready or not. Camilla, however, wasn't so composed. She stepped forward suddenly, voice trembling. "This isn't just your duty, William," she snapped. "This is everything your father and I sacrificed for, everything we built from ashes. You may be stepping into a throne, but I'm stepping into nothing." No one dared respond. She wasn't wrong. Camilla had fought a brutal war of perception for decades, painted as the villain in a fairy tale, humiliated by headlines, ridiculed by the public, and just when she'd clawed her way to some form of respect, the rug was being yanked out from beneath her. She turned to Charles. "You told me we'd face the fire together, that we'd finally earned our place." Her voice cracked. "Now, I'm just being erased." Charles reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Then, as if catching herself, she smoothed her dress and walked out, eyes forward but barely holding it together. Preparations began almost immediately. The staff operated like a covert military unit, silent, swift, and methodical. Phones buzzed with coded language. Couriers ran with sealed folders, every movement calculated to avoid leaks. This wasn't just about crowning a king. It was about damage control. Contain the story, rewrite the narrative, make it look like a historic pivot, not a panic move. The coronation was to happen in under 24 hours. No pomp, no global guest list, just the bare bones of ceremony. A legal transfer of power disguised as a royal choice. William was ushered into a war room of royal legal experts, historians, and political strategists. He was handed documents thicker than bricks, protocols, oaths, constitutional clauses he barely had time to read. Kate was pulled into fittings, nothing elaborate, no designer gowns, just something clean, respectable, regal, a navy blue ensemble chosen not for flair but for optics. Relatable, somber, composed. And in another part of the palace, 3 young children were called in for a quiet family talk. George's eyes went wide, Charlotte kept fidgeting, Louis just asked if being king meant more snacks, William couldn't answer, he knelt down, hugged them all, and whispered, "Things are going to be different now, but we'll be all right." He hoped he was right. The throne room was barely recognizable. The usual grandeur had been stripped down to necessity. No velvet banners, no cathedral choirs, just tight-lipped staff arranging chairs under immense pressure. The media had only been given a vague notice, a special royal address. No one outside the palace truly understood what was about to happen. Inside, though, the mood was electric. Not celebratory, just charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm cracks the sky open. William stood behind a tall wooden door, his heart thudding louder than the murmurs beyond. He had always imagined this moment happening someday, but not like this. Not surrounded by whispers of espionage and betrayal. Not with his father watching from the sidelines. Not with his stepmother holding back tears in the front row. When the doors opened, time seemed to slow. Kate walked beside him, every step measured, her posture immaculate, her expression unreadable. The cameras clicked in a frantic rhythm, capturing each movement, every glance. As they neared the platform, William caught sight of Charles. Dressed in full regalia, the outgoing king looked every inch the monarch, except for the sadness in his eyes. The archbishop stepped forward, voice booming across the chamber. "In service to the crown and country, in the name of continuity and unity, His Majesty King Charles steps aside." There was a pause that felt like a lifetime. Charles rose, moved to the center, and removed the crown from his head. His hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the emotional gravity of it all. He didn't speak a word, just turned and held it out to William. The crown gleamed under the lights as William stepped forward. He didn't hesitate. He knelt, not just out of tradition, but out of respect. The archbishop lowered the crown slowly, resting it on his head. Gasps echoed across the room. From the moment the crown touched his brow, everything changed. William wasn't just a prince anymore. He was King William V. The audience rose, some in awe, some in shock, others clearly unsure what they were witnessing. Cries of "God save the king" rang out, but even that felt surreal. Kate curtsied deeply, her movements fluid, regal. She was now Queen Catherine. The arrow back had been cut from the quiver again. Glenn kept her hopes and her mast up as she rose up and ready to detail. And then cut. Yet her eyes drifted past William toward Camilla, sitting motionless. Camilla's expression hadn't changed. Her gown, rich purple with silver embroidery, should have commanded attention. But nothing about her looked celebratory. Her hands clenched around her lap, her eyes glossy but not weeping. She looked like someone watching their entire identity dissolved in real time. And then it happened. Just as Charles stepped back beside her, Camilla swayed. A subtle motion, enough for her lady-in-waiting to lean in and steady her. Cameras caught it. Millions would replay it. The queen consort's composure fractured. That single moment would become the headline. Not the abdication, not the new king, but Camilla's face. Pale and distant, caught in raw disbelief. Back behind closed doors, as the ceremony wrapped and public statements were drafted, William found himself alone for the first time that day. He looked out a window overlooking the palace gardens, the weight of his new role pressing down like a mountain. Kate entered quietly. "They're waiting for your first address," she said gently. William turned. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" Kate didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer, adjusted the collar of his coat, and whispered, "You're not, but you will be." Hours later, as the world tuned in, King William I stood behind a podium and delivered his first speech. He honored his father, thanked the nation, and promised stability. His final words, however, pierced deeper than any pledge. "My father gave up everything to protect the crown. I intend to honor that sacrifice, not just with power, but with purpose." And just like that, a new era had begun, one written in sacrifice, silence, and the unshakable gaze of millions.